U.S. officials say Russia will begin air and naval exercises within the coming weeks, and this is the first time that Russia has held air and naval maneuvers in the Caribbean since 2019. The exercises are expected to last all summer, culminating in a worldwide naval exercise in the fall. CBS News national security correspondent David Martin joins us now from the Pentagon. David, first of all,
what do you think about the projected surges in voting in favor of Trump now that he's a convicted felon? That's not what? Nobody's like, I wasn't going to vote for Donald Trump, but now that he's a convicted felon, I'm voting for him. What the fuck are you talking about?
What do we know about these exercises, where they're taking place, what nations are involved?
Well, the Cuban government has just announced that 4 Russian warships will arrive in Havana on June 12th next week for a 5-day port visit. So we can expect these exercises to begin by the end of this month. And in addition to those 4 Russian naval ships, we can expect to see Russian long-range bombers patrolling down the East Coast. Now, Russian ships have made port calls in Cuba before, and Russian long-range bombers have flown down the East Coast before. What makes this noteworthy is that it is the first time in 5 years that Russia has done both at the same time.
You know, David, as people...
Why is Cuba agreeing? What the fuck do you mean, why is Cuba agreeing? Do you guys not understand the relationship between America and Cuba? Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but America has had crippling sanctions on Cuba since the Cuban Revolution. We backed the dictatorship. They lost. And we haven't stopped punishing the Cubans since. Like, they treat this fucking tiny island nation like the goddamn, like the biggest villains of all time for the crime of having a socialist revolution. Okay? And hurting American interests in Cuba. America would much rather have Cuba remain a sugar plantation and a tourism destination for the American mafia, or just, you know, owned and operated by the American mob. And they really don't like that it didn't happen like that. It didn't continue being like that. We gave a lot of weapons to the Batista dictatorship at the time, which was significantly more bloody than anything else. Then we kept trying to destroy Cuba by obviously directly attacking Cuba at times, trying to assassinate Fidel Castro, and also having a sanctions regime on Cuba. Completely unacceptable. There is no world in which America's actions there are justifiable. All things considered, Cuba has still been able to thrive in spite of it all. The main export of Cuba is U.S. The Cubans who leave and send money back to our family, the fuck you on about? What the fuck is this up with this chat glazing up Cuba? What the fuck is up with, like, what the fuck is up with Cubans who come to the United States of America and shit on Cuba? Like, did you address any of the things that I just mentioned? No. In what planet is it justifiable to fucking blockade and sanction an entire nation? Like, what are you talking about? You just said they thrive. No way they have thrived. Yes, they have thrived, all things considered. They have. You have to analyze a country and its prospects by looking at all of the hurdles that they've overcome. When you look at it from that framework, all of a sudden, America being the wealthiest nation on earth, and yet still having a massive homelessness crisis, still not having free health care, still not having free college education, having some of the worst literacy rates in comparison to other OECD nations, having the worst home ownership rate in comparison to other OECD nations, having the worst healthcare outcomes across the board in comparison to other OECD nations, losing out to Cuba in terms of life expectancy is a massive fucking failure. But nobody wants to have that conversation. So So just keep talking about GDP, a metric that favors the United States of America. It's ridiculous. It's like thinking that the economy is doing good because the market is doing good, when the market, or at least like a stock, will perform better when they lay off hundreds of people. Okay, does that mean that, you know, the economy is moving in a positive direction? Hundreds of layoffs occurred, downsizing occurred, they eliminated redundancies, and now the stock prospects for a particular corporation is better. Hundreds of people lost their jobs in the process. If you hyper focus on the numbers on that, in that regard, you will think you will be duped into believing that, you know, things are going fine. It's the same principle.
Folks are making a comparison to Kennedy, to the sphere of influence with Russian missiles in Cuba, now Russian naval exercises and military exercises. Talk to us about the timing of these exercises. And
Cuba has a shot that heals lung cancer. Yes, Cuba does have a vaccine for lung cancer. A shot that cures cancer, I'm calling bullshit. First of all, mRNA vaccines are working on that as well. But Cuba has had a lung cancer vaccine for quite a while. People with lung cancer in the United States of America could not go to Cuba to get it for the longest time. They had to illegally go to Cuba and try and get it before, if they have a likelihood of getting lung cancer. Yeah, we have HPV vaccines, and HPV causes cancer too.
to that point, whether it poses any threat to the U.S.
Well, U.S. officials say that on one level, this is simply the summer exercise season kicking off. But they also believe that this is partly a show of displeasure by Putin for American support of Ukraine and for all the NATO exercises that have been going on in Europe. This presence of 4 Russian ships in the Caribbean off the east coast of the United States just pales in comparison to the size of the exercises the U.S. military has been conducting with its NATO allies in Europe. So this is not considered in any way a direct threat to the United States.
Where's that one chatter who was shitting on Cuba? Where's he at? I want to hear more from him about how awful Cuba is and how we have to have a sanctions regime on Cuba. Where'd he go? It's ridiculous. I promise you, I have more smoke for the current Turkish administration than you do for the Cuban administration. And yet, when America fucks over Turkey and engages in actions that are worse overall for the Turkish population, I will fucking openly call that shit out, because I'm not some dumb fuck blinded by some weird loyalty to the United States of America. You said, didn't Obama remove sanctions during his presidency? Yeah, what happened? I don't know if you know this, but there was another president that came after him, and then another president that came after him. And no, Obama didn't remove all the sanctions during his presidency. Obama developed a pathway towards removing sanctions and normalizing relations with Cuba, which was great, only to have it reversed with Donald Trump and continued under the Brandon administration as well. So go ahead. What's your answer to that? Also, even before Obama, what's your answer to the sanctions regime that was in place and the embargo that was in place for however many decades at this point? Nobody's loyal to the shit country, man. Okay, but like it seems like you're defending, or rather refusing to acknowledge, a key part of my argument. I agree sanctions are the culprit, but Cuba's not doing it according to its citizens. No, I'm not saying Cuba is doing great. I'm saying Cuba is thriving in consideration with the sanctions. All things considered, Cuba is doing great. Cuba should be looking like Haiti right now. If America had its way, Cuba would look like Haiti. That's it. That's my point. It's doing well in spite of the United States. No country could survive in this current global economy with the same level of sanctions and the embargoes that America is placing upon them. Okay? That's it. Having said that, as far as restrictions on certain civil liberties, not LGBTQ stuff, obviously they're more woke than we are on that front, but restrictions on like free speech, for example, is because Cuba is also in a consistent defensive posture against the largest global superpower on the fucking planet. Cuba is a tiny island. This does not justify people being imprisoned for speaking out against the government or whatever. But if you think for even a brief moment that America has not implemented similar restrictions on free speech, like the Sedition Act, as a matter of fact, in times of war, you would be wrong. So that also goes back to America's restrictions. This is why I have more criticisms for Chinese restrictions than I do for Cuban restrictions on that similar vein. It's still bad across the board, but there's a real reason for why they exist. The consequences are still damaging nonetheless.
David, do we expect that the Biden administration will respond in any way to these exercises?
Well, you can be sure that the U.S. military is going to be tracking this exercise very closely, sending up jet fighters to intercept the long-range bombers and shadowing those ships, in particular the submarine. I just checked, and it turns out that right now in the Caribbean, the only thing the U.S. Navy has there are autonomous sail drones. But the east coast of the United States is just bristling with
Joel Severud, thank you for the 25 gifted subs.
air bases and naval bases, and the U.S. could surge ships and aircraft out if in this exercise and somehow in some way turn threatening.
David Martin at the Pentagon for us. Thanks, David.
Good evening tonight from Normandy, where we witnessed something truly historic today. World War II veterans returning 80 years to the day after they stormed the beaches of Normandy and changed the course of history here. Tonight, my exclusive...
Wait, didn't we watch this? Oh, we watched a snippet of this interview, not the full thing. All right, let's go to First Thought, who had a coverage on the matter from 7 hours ago, how the Russia-Ukraine war will end. For the sake of brevity, this video will focus solely on the state of the war and not the internal politics of the involved parties, such as the influence of far-right elements in Ukraine or the reception of mass mobilization in Russia.
After nearly 2 years of war in Ukraine,
the northeast of Ukraine is being pounded by Russian missiles and bombs.
Dangerous new levels as Vladimir Putin orders Russian troops to begin tactical nuke drills.
It's so funny how the same fucking people will be like, I can't believe, people speaking out against communism in Cuba get arrested while they fucking simultaneously watch that same exact shit happening in America and don't comprehend that like these two things are in line with one another. Beyond that, the United States of America obviously still has the highest prisoner per capita population out of every other OECD nation in general, and every other nation, as a matter of fact. So,
February
what the fuck are we talking about? Land of the free, my ass.
4th, 2022. Russia invades Ukraine by launching a full-scale offensive. Strategically important areas such as Kyiv, power plants, and other major infrastructure are attacked with missile salvos. Infantry pours in from the north, east, and south, including amphibious landings in the critical port cities of Odessa and Mariupol. Russia's overwhelming numbers and superior firepower led most observers to predict that Ukraine would fall within just a few weeks. However, much to everyone's surprise, Ukraine not only survived the initial onslaught, they pushed most Russian forces back to their own borders, except in the Donbass, where the two strongest Russian-aligned separatist groups operate. Despite this initial success and notable instances of Ukraine achieving gains thought impossible, such as sinking several major Russian naval ships and hitting targets inside Russia, Ukraine has been on the back foot, suffering military defeats, shortages of critical supplies and munitions, political instability, and the increasingly faltering United States. Is Ukraine on the verge of...
It's not per capita anymore, but we do have the largest prisoner population in totality. Wait, oh, did El Salvador beat us? Is that what it is?
...of defeat? But before we answer that question, I'd like to take a quick moment to thank our channel sponsor, Aura. As you all know, we make political content here and on our other channels. Unfortunately, that means some people don't like us very much. These days, a quick Google search is all it takes to find someone's personal information. Data brokers sell your information to scammers, spammers, and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, email, home address, health records, your relatives, it's all readily available for those who want to find it. That's why I've been using Aura to help keep my private details private. Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests for me. This not only cuts down on the amount of spam I get, but also helps keep all my accounts safe from bad actors. I'll give you a real-world example. AT&T recently revealed that over 73 million...
Do you think there's a long-term hope for socialism in Russia? Fuck no.
Customer records, both existing and former customers, were released on the dark web. They recommended that those affected change their passwords, monitor account activity, and consider credit freezes or fraud alerts from credit bureaus. This was a huge breach, but I don't have to worry. Aura does all of this for me.
I don't get it. I thought it was Israel that didn't accept the agreement. Qatar threatens to expel Hamas if terror group rejects ceasefire deal, report says. U.S. official says Doha have been warning Hamas for months about possible expulsion, moving to concrete threats following repeated requests from Biden and public criticism from Israel. What are you asking me? I don't get it. I thought it was Israel that didn't accept the agreement. Do you think Israel is accepting the agreement? Don't you think that this is basically just following along with the whole, like, don't pay attention to Israel refusing to acknowledge this agreement? It's actually Hamas that's, refusing to accept it. That's just America moving along with the commentary that they, or with the consent that they want to manufacture. He's saying, why is Qatar threatening Hamas when they should know Hamas is accepting? Because Qatar is operating as a staging ground for these negotiations because of the United States of America. Qatar is not operating on their own individual framework at all. They just do what America wants them to do. And America is saying, increase the pressure, make it seem as though the responding party is actually Israel. The party that's responding positively is actually Israel. It's Hamas that's like disagreeing. What do you mean? U.S. State Department spokesperson Matt Miller said on Wednesday that the U.S. has observed both Egypt and Qatar exert significant pressure on Hamas, though he declined to elaborate on the specifics of these efforts. Like what? We've seen both countries play an incredibly important role in mediating this deal, making it clear that this deal is in the interest of the Palestinian people and doing so appropriately. U.S. officials privately noted that Egypt is applying more pressure on Hamas than in the past, though the extent of Egypt's private dialogue with the group remains unclear. The U.S. continues to advocate for the deal, with Biden and 16 other world leaders urging Hamas to accept it. That's ironic because it's actually Biden and 16 other world leaders urging Israel to accept it, emphasizing Israel's readiness to move forward. This is literally just like reverse world, a bizarro world. However, U.S. officials admit that there is no backup plan if Hamas rejects the deal. Hamas's expected refusal, as reported by the Hezbollah-affiliated Lebanese newspaper Al Akhbar, stems from clear statements by Israeli ministers and Knesset members indicating an intention to resume the war after a hostage deal, which is not the deal. That's a whole different deal. It's not a deal at all. There you go. It took us, 8 paragraphs to get to the fucking meat of the matter? The report claimed that these statements explicitly revealed Israel's plan to renew hostilities post-deal. Hamas demands a clear framework to end the war with actionable mechanisms, dismissing U.S. guarantees as insufficient. Does that elaborate? Does that help you understand with a little bit more clarity what is going on? Biden claims Israel has a proposal that is a 3-phase proposal that is also almost identical to the Hamas proposal that was given on February, in the month of February. Israel turns around and basically thinks that they can hide the true intentions of continuing hostilities, even though you have the term ceasefire in there. Well, we don't know if Israel actually put the term ceasefire in there, but at least Biden presented it as Israel's deal when he said ceasefire and a full-blown cessation of hostilities in phase 2. Israel turns around and goes, oh, no, we didn't mean it like that. We want to keep bombing, actually, with no clear indication of cessation of hostilities at all, as a matter of fact. We're going to keep going on with our military conquest to dismantle Hamas and destroy Hamas, both politically and militarily. Which is basically going back, and under normal terms, it's a a rug pull. Yeah, as Shatter said, it's basically saying like, no, you don't understand. We're going to keep doing what we want to do. It's not a deal at all. So if you, and even in the article, they very openly and clearly state that. Yeah, dude, Hamas demands a clear framework to end the war with actionable mechanisms is incredibly valid. They're saying, do the deal that you said you're going to do. I'm a bit sad. I like that we're moving on and going, I'm a bit sad Hamas isn't accepting the deal. Bro, it's not a deal. It's not the deal, okay? Hamas saying, we will accept the deal that you put forward, but if it's not the deal that you put forward and you just keep blowing up Palestinian homes, then that's not a fucking ceasefire deal at all. It took you 0 fucking seconds. Look at what I am. Look at this. Look at what's in front of you. Even this is Ynet. It's obviously biased, and even then, why would you assume Israel would ceasefire in the ceasefire deal is so funny. I'm a bit sad Hamas isn't accepting the deal. I have no illusion of positive intentions from Israel, but I feel like the refusal will be used as an excuse to justify more slaughter if they accept the deal and Israel reneged it. It would ratchet up pressure and more. Hard to be optimistic, just afraid more people are going to die. I can't tell if this is like Hasbara bots have been deployed in the chat or something as soon as we looked at this article. Just saying, when they keep doing it, there will be more pressure. What do you mean? There's no deal at all then. Like, Israel's like, yeah, no, give us the hostages and we'll continue our genocide. That's fucking insane. That's not a deal. That's not the deal. A ceasefire means a ceasefire, okay? No more blowing up Palestinian houses. It is also so laughable because, like, every Israeli mouthpiece so far has been like, no, we're going to keep